Welcome to 1856 First Church Pella Podcast. Well, good afternoon. It's a great day here again in Pella, Iowa. I always talk about the weather. I don't know why I'm so excited about the weather. It's a little cooler today, but nonetheless, spring is in the air. How are you doing today, Breanne?
Oh, spring is definitely in the air. It is a gorgeous day. I think you're just gearing up for retirement. Maybe you'll be an announcer somewhere else someday.
Maybe. I'm not thinking of retirement, but thank you for that little adage there. You're looking very springy today in your salmon. And I pulled out the long sleeves because it was quite chilly this morning.
I know. Well, the salmon just helps me to have color because it's so pale.
Yeah, it's good to describe people's outfits on an audio-only podcast. So thank you for your patience with us. Well, Breanne, anything exciting happened in your world in the last few days?
Yes, I'm actually excited to announce that our homeschool group is wrapped up. We had our mock trial on Friday, so it was a successful event, and the kids had a great experience.
So when you're homeschooled, summer vacation starts in April.
Well, for some, but we still have math and science to finish up. They're always longer.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can see that. Well, may the Lord bless your children as they finish up their math and science.
They are currently cleaning the house while I'm here.
But what's exciting now is tulip time is in the air.
That's right. Guests have been here for weeks already.
Yes, and next week is the big week of tulip time, and so we'll probably have to have a special tulip time edition next Tuesday.
I think so. And where can people find you? Should they look for the man in the tall hat?
They could look for the man in the tall hat. I'm that guy that's on the Monopoly game.
Yes.
And the man in the hat, but I'll be out there every night. And then I'll also be in my little shack with my wife on the west side announcing the parade.
Yeah, so it's always fun. My kids like to always spot you and then wave at you.
Well, it's a great thing. And I go home after a few parades with a dent in my rib cage because my wife is my spotter and she always pokes me to say, next float.
Yes, or people are waving at you.
Yeah, well, no, that's not really the case.
You got to keep your nose in that. But hey, there's also two other big things happening.
Big things happening.
Yeah,
what could possibly be happening besides church on Sunday?
This is true. That is a big thing. But you and your wife have a birthday like a week apart.
Yeah, but hers is next month.
Yes, in May. But
yes, it is in May.
But yours is...
Mine will be 366 days from now.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, folks, stop by tomorrow and you can wish him happy birthday.
And then in another 365 days will be it again. I was just skipping over tomorrow's.
I saw that. I see what you tried to do.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to know that we're sitting in a room here with Breanne, who, when she has her birthday on April 4th,
yes,
it is declared Breanne's birthday month.
This is true. I like my birthday.
And so I feel like I'm falling in under the shadow still of her birthday. That's why we don't emphasize. So whatever happens tomorrow will be about Breanne.
No, it will not be, because I will not be here. It will be about you.
Oh, thanks. Really appreciate the way she's celebrating my birthday tomorrow. Makes my initial point that it's about Breanne. Well, anyway, we need to move off of this onto something far more meaningful for this podcast today, because once again, we have two wonderful guests sitting here in the room.
We do.
And do you want to introduce our wonderful guest, Breanne?
I would love to. We have Bobby and Hope with us. And let's see, Hope, you grew up in First Church. Is that correct?
I did, yes. I went to First Church when I grew up, and it was a great place. Yep, it's good to be back. Thanks for having us.
And you know, Hope, when I hear that, I just think, okay, this is a while ago. You're not very old, but you grew up here as a child. What unique thing do you remember about First Church growing up?
Anything? Yes, anything more unique than Millie Vandekeef and all of her... they weren't really recitals. All the plays she put on.
Yes, the Christmas play.
Yep, that was great. Yep, downstairs in Sunday school. Yep, lots of great memories here at First Church.
Wow.
And you probably go back to the days in the children's chapel where there were still pews.
This is true.
What?
Yes, because it looked like a chapel. Mm-hmm. And because I know this is a burning question, I'm going to ask it before Breanne does, but did you have cookies on Sunday morning after church?
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think we did.
Were they those Dutch windmill cookies then without any flavor?
I do recall.
Yes.
We probably had to limit the supply though.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm interested in those things.
This was in the children's chapel? Or was it after, like coffee time?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Wow. Special.
Now, the person sitting across from Hope is Bobby. And Bobby, where did you grow up?
I grew up in southeast Iowa. So not very far away, hour and a half away, out in a little farming community in southeast Iowa.
Wow. Okay.
Was it near Donaldson or Montrose?
North of there. Yes. I'm
Because
very
that's where my
familiar.
husband grew up. I
Yes.
forgot about this little
Yes.
tidbit of information.
Yes, I grew up in a community just about as big as Montrose.
Very tiny.
Montrose famous for the watermelon festival in the summertime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who need a little fact about Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For a tiny town, you're pretty tall.
Yes. Yes.
Is it the river water?
No, I think it was all the herbicides and pesticides that were sprayed on the fields.
Wow. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
There's still hope for me because I always feel like if I was 6'9", I'd be a lot skinnier.
Yeah. Well, some people say that.
Yeah. Because I guarantee you, if you were 5'8", you wouldn't look like that.
Well, you guys have come across the pond, as they say, to visit with us. And what do we owe the pleasure of your visit back to your hometown?
It's good to be here. This is the best time of year to be here around the tulip time. However, we're back to celebrate the graduation of our oldest son from college. So Ethan goes to Cedarville University in Ohio.
Nice.
He's graduating in a week, so we're back to celebrate that with him.
Oh, that's so neat. And so what does Ethan hope to do with his degree?
Yes, well, receive it in a week is the first step.
Step one.
Walk across the stage. After that, he took a job here in Pella, so he'll be back
really?
working.
So we can keep our eyes on him
For
you.
sure.
So when do you hop across the pond again? When will you head back?
So we will be here for 2 more weeks. And then after tulip time, of course, while we're here, we can be here the week before tulip time and then miss out on tulip time. You know,
Of
there's
course.
lots of fried Dutch food that needs to be eaten in the next 2 weeks. So we will be here for tulip time, celebrate Mother's Day. And so we spend the rest of our year in England. And England actually celebrates Mother's Day in March. So
Really?
Hope gets 2 Mother's Days every year because she's multicultural. So she gets to celebrate the American Mother's Day and British Mother's Day. So we will
Is there a difference?
fly out of Des Moines the Monday after tulip time.
Okay.
Sorry, what was your question?
Oh, sorry. Is there a difference in celebrating Mother's Day?
No, it in the UK, it has a slightly more historical meaning to relationship to the mother church.
Interesting.
But no, it's still flowers and chocolates for mom.
Nice. I like that you're double dipping. This is
Now,
great.
is it true in the UK that do they call mom?
They call
Or
her mum.
Mum. I thought
Yes.
that mum.
Mum.
And then
Yes.
grandma is mom.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Or
think so.
Grams.
Or Nana.
Yeah. Yeah. They have just as many silly names for the different generations as we have here.
Yeah, that's true.
So you were talking about sneaking around for tulip time because of the food. But how does that compare to the food there?
Well, we love living in England, but even the classic Brits will say their food is not that exciting. They refer to it as beige food.
Okay.
So the classic British food is fish and chips or meat pies, which is some sort of little pastry pie with some sort of meat and gravy and potatoes in it. Or sausage rolls, which is basically a chunk of sausage wrapped up in a pastry. We would call them pigs in the blanket.
Okay.
So most food is not terribly exciting in the UK.
You shared a picture the other night here, the English breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And what was peculiar about that?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask.
Okay.
Beans, beans, beans.
Yes, they love baked beans with their breakfast, and it's not like a classic barbecue baked beans with like brisket. It's the cheapest kind of pork and beans that you can buy, and they do love their baked beans. I help with our men's ministry at church, and the ongoing debate is whether or not we should go and buy more beans for the breakfast because they don't think 10 cans of beans are enough for 40 guys to eat. So,
Wow.
You know, when I was in South Africa, we'd have beans for breakfast there too. I think that was because of the influence there. And I just thought, this is fabulous. I could incorporate that. What a way to get a powerful start to your day.
yes.
Yeah.
Which is another brown food, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
or
all
beige
super
food.
colorful.
Yeah, and if they want to add a little extra flavor to their food,
Yeah.
in classic British fashion, the sauce they use is brown sauce.
Which is what?
It's like it's kind of like ketchup, but not as sweet as ketchup. It's like a thicker version of Worcestershire sauce.
Very interesting. Now, this topic of food, it does make me a little bit hungry this time of day. But so you mentioned your men's ministry. So I was thinking about, your roles and all of that. What point, I guess, in your guys' life did your life plan take a different turn than most that landed you here in London?
So Hope and I both went to university in Ames, met there, moved to Chicago, and we're in the professional world in Chicago. And we were there for several years. And we got really involved with a good church near where we lived in Chicago, and felt like the Lord was stirring something in our hearts, like, hey, there's a more involved way that we could serve the community. So our young adults ministry at our church liked to do social events. So we started recommending, what if we did service projects? And is probably a common thing when you make suggestions, people say, that's a great idea. Why don't you organize that for us? So we began to organize service projects. We went to some soup kitchens, spent some evenings in a homeless shelter making meals, and also went around our community in the fall and raked leaves for people who needed extra help. And just really found that we were invigorated and energized by serving the community.
Nice.
And as we kind of got more involved in that, we started asking ourselves, what are some ways we could serve people? We enjoyed serving together. We enjoyed coordinating those things. And right at that time, we had a family in our church that had just moved back from working overseas. They were in South America. And so we started talking to them about, well, what does it look like to live overseas? I didn't really understand what it meant to be a cross-cultural worker. I grew up in a small community. We had a good church, but we didn't really ever understand what it meant to go overseas. So this couple met with us and kind of told us about their life living in South America. And then they pointed us to some resources. And one of those resources was the Perspectives class, which is similar. I think here they have the missions class. It's a little deeper dive than the missions class is, but so we took the Perspectives class, which helped us have a greater understanding about what does cross-cultural work look like. And it's I think it was about almost a semester-long course, because you could take it for college credit. We just kind of audited it, and through taking that class, we began to understand more what it meant to work overseas, live overseas, and then we began to kind of float our bio out to some agencies and said, hey, this is who we are. This is what degrees we have. How can we use this? And some of them didn't reply back to us. And some of them said, oh, let us know when you have a seminary degree and then we can talk. And there were a couple that said, yeah, if you're interested, let's talk. So we communicated with a couple of different agencies for about 5 years. Weren't really sure what the Lord might be leading us to. And we crossed paths with some people who were very adamant about exactly what they wanted to do. Like, oh, I want to go work with this people group in this country, or I want to go do this in this region. And we didn't feel like the Lord really gave us clarity in saying, we want you to go to this country. Okay. So we just continued to pray and talk to a couple of organizations that just were really patient and graceful with us. One of the organizations said, we're just trusting you're walking with the Lord and you're listening to him. And when he leads you in that direction, we want to be here to help lead you and walk you wherever you feel like the Lord is leading you. So that was ultimately how we got to doing cross-cultural work. And one day, one of those groups was with us, and they had a gentleman with him. He was the director of creative access. And with a title like that, it kind of demands an explanation. So we were having dinner, and I asked him, so what do you do as the director of creative access? So he said, well, a lot of agencies do work in certain countries that allow them to do that easily, but there are a handful of countries that don't allow people to come in as a religious worker, don't allow people to come in under certain visas. So we help them get in the country in an appropriate way. creatively access the country. So he was the director of people creatively accessing the country. And there was an opportunity for us to move to North Africa and use our profession. We were going to work in the hospitality industry in North Africa, and we moved there with 2 young children, 6 and 3, when we moved there. So that was that's the Cliff Notes version of how the Lord kind of stirred our hearts to use our profession to be able to share what we believe.
And I hear that very clearly from you, Bobby, in that. And how about you, Hope? You don't have to recount the whole thing. I'm just kind of wondering, in the whole process, how were you feeling in this? Was this something that you were just following your husband, or was the Lord placing this on your heart as well?
No, that's a great question. Well, being of the same profession, we were going to work together in the hospitality industry. I was very excited about it as well. But it was really interesting what happened after we got there. After 6 months of being there, the climate of the government shifted significantly, and all the relationships we had with developers cooled. So we weren't able to continue in that work. And actually, some of our teammates left at that point too. But I love those points in Scripture where it says, "But God," and that was really a key moment for us. We spent some time in prayer, a lot of time in prayer. And Bobby's always played basketball in high school and college, and it's just a way for him to relationally connect with people. And it was neat to see there was an opportunity that opened up for him to play on a team in North Africa, for that to be our new reason for being there, because the business model didn't work. So that was really exciting.
I did not remember that part in your story, so that was neat.
Yeah.
You both mentioned you have a seminary degree?
No.
We do not. Nope.
Oh, I thought you said you did. I'm sorry, but
Somebody said that he needed to get a seminary degree.
Okay,
Yes.
but you didn't get one. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
some
remember
organizations
you have a degree in architecture, right?
Landscape architecture,
landscape
both of us.
Very neat.
Bobby is also upgraded, though. He does have a master's in coaching and
Athletic
administration. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I had the privilege of getting to spend a weekend with you at our women's retreat, which was just a delight.
She's looking at Hope, by the way.
I am, yes, just to clarify. Thank you for that, since this is audio. So Hope and I got to share a table as we were at this women's retreat, and I had asked you the question of how do you share your faith? And you had a wonderful answer. I wondered if you could share it with everyone else.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I think sharing your faith is born out of a conviction of what you really believe. Oftentimes we don't share something unless we really believe it. So the first step, I think, is you have to know what you really believe. Secondly, I think decisions are made out of 2 ways. One way we base our decisions out of fear, and one way we base our decisions out of love, right? And if we are fear-based, it's going to be difficult to share our faith because we're thinking about those outcomes. But if we're love-based, we're going to be thinking about the person we're sharing to, right? And in that, I think we talked about at the retreat a little bit, even people who love the Lord can fall into this fight or flight moment when somebody asks you about their faith. You can be having a normal conversation about the weather like we all do here in Pella, right? And then it switches to a faith-based conversation and your hands start to get a little cold and sweaty, right? You start thinking about other things. Your heart rate might increase, but we just have to remember that it's okay because it's not our words, right? The Lord supplies those words for us. And I think I was sharing with you too, one thing that I like to pray when I'm talking to someone is, Lord, what is it that I need to know? And what is it that I need to say? And I ask the Lord, is this an invitation to share my faith, right? Are we doing the thing together? Are we doing this? Because then it doesn't feel like it's just me either, right? So, yeah. So we don't have to fear, and we don't have to be reserved either. We can go forward when we're listening to the Lord and He's telling us what to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
with that, you had mentioned, so your church. So as you move to various places, it seems like you found good community in the places you're at. So now that you're in London, the church that you're part of, what does church look like for you there in London?
It's relatively what we would consider a normal church. So our church meets in a university. So we rent a space in the university, kind of a lecture hall where we have some well, I want to say stadium seats. That sounds really fancy, but there's like there's elevated seats, and
We
then
should
we
look
have
at that for our sanctuary.
chairs on the floor, and just we meet there. There's a setup ministry, so there's a group of people who just love to serve, so they go 2 hours early and set up chairs and sound system and make sure everything's all set up. And so I would say it's relatively a normal, what we would consider in America a normal Sunday experience. And then during the week, because we don't have a church building to go to, our church does rent an office space that we have a small meeting space in, so we can do some things there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
So you mentioned
it's normal.
men's ministry, and I know we talked about Alpha. So that all happens somewhere else?
It happens at our church office.
Oh,
so our church,
okay.
it's in an old train station. So where our big meeting space is the old waiting hall where people would wait to catch the train. So they built a brand new train station right next to it, and the old train station's still there, and that's where our church rents office spaces in the old train station.
So during the week in a situation like that, are you going back to church for other things during the week? Or is it basically focused on Sunday?
We do have other things during the week. So we have Alpha class that meets on every Wednesday night. Wednesday evening, Alpha is there. We have our pastor has an office space in there, so he's in there 4 days a week. He has a couple of days where he might be out doing other things. We also have our men's breakfast there. So we have a men's breakfast once a month that meets there. There are a couple of, we call our small groups gospel communities. There are a couple of gospel communities that meet there because it's maybe young adults. Nobody has a meeting space in their house to house more than 4 or 5 people. So they meet there. So there are various things going on during the week that meet in that space. So it's relatively well used. Friday afternoon, evening, our youth groups meet there. So junior high, senior high youth meet there. They have their evening there as well. So
It's just really interesting to me, of course, as the church grows throughout the world. The home is so oftentimes the focus because the meeting places are often not there. Many churches are underground, so it's interesting to hear the church building be able to be used so much there. What does ministry look like, or things that your daughter's involved in?
Yeah, it's interesting because when we moved overseas, the main thrust of what we were doing was working with the basketball club, and so you have to keep your expectations high for that, but also open to whatever else the Lord puts in your path. One thing that I didn't see coming was being involved with the Alpha course. That's one of the things that meets at the church building. And the Alpha course has been great. It's a 10-week course where people can come and ask questions about Christianity. There's no requirement to get in that you need to know a certain amount or that you even have these questions, but curiosity is welcome. So that's one thing that I've been involved with and have really enjoyed walking with some young women through that. Another thing that happens is the youth group you talked about. Sarah's involved with that. And Sarah's really involved with the basketball program as well.
Yeah, Sarah goes to youth, and then she has a few friends from youth group, and she has a few friends from the girls basketball program, and they're beginning to cross-pollinate those groups as well. So she had a birthday party a couple of weeks ago and invited a couple of friends from youth, a couple of friends from her basketball club, and there's 4 girls that have started their own Bible study on Friday afternoons. So before youth group, 4 girls get together, have a meal at one of the girls' house. They kind of rotate, and then they do a small Bible study, and they're trying to decide who else they might invite. And Sarah's got a few friends who live in our neighborhood. They live a 10, 15-minute walk from our house, and she's invited them several times, and they've declined, but she continues to just ask them.
Persevere.
And Sarah does also go, so on Saturday mornings, or not every Saturday morning, once a month, our church does a street outreach. So Sarah usually goes with Hope. I have to go because of other commitments and do some basketball or men's ministry things. but they do a street outreach. So Sarah goes with that, and she, even for a 14, 15-year-old, she enjoys it. She comes home and she's got all kinds of stories about people she's interacted with, and we usually send people out in groups of 2s or 3s. So it's not like we're just sending her out on her own. So but yeah, she enjoys it. She really has a heart for people.
That's great. Even though you said at a young age. I was thinking about Sarah as you're talking here, and it's neat to hear that she has good relationships and friends, and which made me start thinking about your presentation the other night about the diversity of where you're at now. And I was curious if you can share a little bit of those stats, like the diversity of London, and what does that look like?
Yeah, it really surprised me how diverse it was. You think royal family, you think British because you're in England, and definitely that's there. Bobby said the other day, he hears about 1 in 5 conversations are in English, right? As you're walking down the street, that surprised me. There's about 9 million people in London.
It's crazy.
Of that 9 million, 4 million are have been born outside of the UK. So now we have a pretty big population of people that would not be considered British. And so it's a really big melting pot. Within a 5-minute walking distance of our apartment, there's a Sikh temple. Another 5-minute walk the other way is a Hindu temple. And we've got one of the biggest mosques in Western London by us as well. And at first, you could have many different thoughts, but it's really interesting to see how all these people from different faith backgrounds interact. There are not as many collisions as you would think. Yeah, it's really quite beautiful to see the diversity.
That's neat. So with that, so you've had this cultural melting pot, as you said. Is there any unique faith stories that you can share, or something that sticks out in your mind? And just unique isn't always the best word to use, but is there any faith stories that you can share?
Related to diversity, I mean, our church is relatively diverse. We have several people that come to our church that are either seeking refugee status or asylum. Not a lot, but we have, I can think of 4 or 5 folks in our church. So we have a young man that's there from Libya. He's a believer, and he left Libya because he came to faith. And we have a couple of other countries in the Middle East where we have folks that are there because they were believers and had to leave or risk some safety issues. So those are just neat stories to hear how they came to faith.
Yeah.
And then we, and I would say probably for me, the most overwhelming statistic is 25% of the United Kingdom would consider themselves non-religious, which is kind of a catch-all for people who don't want to make a decision on faith. And we have a former atheist in our gospel community at our house, and his story is incredible. He was baptized a year ago, and 6 months before he was baptized, he would say this: if you would have come to me and asked me about Jesus, I would have cussed you out and told you to get out of here. But God was working in his heart, and January of 2025, he was going through a few things in his life, and he remembered 20 years previously, a couple of his coworkers and friends invited him to an Alpha course, and he wasn't interested, wanted nothing to do with it, kind of blew him off. But he was going through some things in his life that reminded him of that. So he was starting to have more questions about faith. He wasn't interested, he just had questions. And he started watching some, Instagram shorts and YouTube shorts and watching these videos. And he stumbled across Christian and atheist debates. And he said initially he was rooting for the atheists because he was kind of anti-Christian. And he's like, the more he watched them, he saw something different in the way the Christians were receiving and responding. And it kind of endeared him to them. And he's like, after about 3 or 4 weeks of, doom scrolling on Instagram way too late when he should have been in bed. He found himself being sympathetic for the Christians, and then he started watching more videos and more videos.
Wow.
And that in conjunction with just thinking about this alpha class that his friends had invited him to. So he got online, just Googled alpha classes in the area that he lived. Our church was the one that was offering an alpha class that started the second week in January. Mm-hmm. So he enrolled, and within 3 weeks, he was extremely interested. By the 10 weeks were over, he had committed his life to Christ, got baptized, joined a small group, and he's probably one of the most interested people in our small group. Like, he's always contributing to the questions. He wants to learn. He's an academic at heart, but there's a lot of interesting stories. I mean, we all have an interesting story of our faith. Yeah.
But what a beautiful statistic. I mean, when people go through the Alpha course, I mean, I read this some years ago that when you go through the Alpha course, 80% of the people are going to commit their lives to Christ.
Wow.
I mean, what's incredible is when you get an opportunity through a stimulating program like that for people to learn week after week, be in a non-threatening environment, ask questions, whatever. I'm not stupid. I'm just going to ask questions, get those questions answered. Holy Spirit's doing the heavy lifting.
Yep.
And so it makes sense when you come to that, I don't know, week 7 or 8, when it comes time for commitment time, that happens. It's beautiful. But I have another question. You know, you both came out of Iowa, beautiful Pella, southeastern Iowa, not necessarily known as culturally diverse areas of the planet. Yet here you have spent a great portion of your adult lives now in cross-cultural experiences. I'm just interested, what does that mean to you? Because I've spent a lot of time in the city, and I've really enjoyed it. And if people ask me, well, what do you miss about being in the city? I always say the cross-cultural experiences.
Yeah.
But when I was in the city, we had a lot of people running away from that too. What does it do for you emotionally and in your involvements?
Yeah. Yeah. So Pella is a town of about what, 10,000?
Yeah,
do you think?
11,572, but
So-
who's
Nice,
counting?
nice.
So going to another town of 9 million people is a big leap. However, there are always experiences, there are always opportunities, there's always places to explore. So the city itself is exciting, but the city's exciting because of the people.
Yeah.
You know, when you move to a different place, you go from surviving to thriving because of people. And we have a lot to learn from people that are different from us. Even the 25% you talked about, Bobby, being non-religious, we have a lot to learn from them, a lot to learn how they think and what they're interested in. And we find that a lot of people are a lot of like, right? So we might look different on the outside, but a lot of us want and desire the same things, right?
So what would you say is something that you learned from these people around you that you didn't anticipate initially?
Well, I think over the years of living cross-culturally, you appreciate certain things. So North Africa, like even in rural Iowa, people are very hospitable. Like they talk about Iowa friendly, right? Like we were leaving the house we're staying in the other day, and a farmer drove his side-by-side down the gravel road when we were coming, and I just instinctively waved at him, and Sarah was like, "Did you know him?" I'm like, "No." Well, why did you wave at him? I'm like, because that's
You're
just
Iowa nice.
Yeah, I'm Iowa nice. And when we were in North Africa, people were just extremely hospitable, like would invite you over to their house. And we had a friend that invited us over, and this friend was not very well off and fed us a feast. And the entire time we're eating, he kept pushing the food toward us, right? Like he was eating, but he was like, he wanted to make sure that we were fed. So I think there's an aspect of hospitality that really kind of flourished when we lived in North Africa. Living in London, there's an excitement about the diversity. There's excitement about different cultures. Like I like adventure. So, learning new phrases in different languages. One of the things that I've tried to do is I try to learn what nationalities people are. And then I try to learn how to say good morning to them. So when I run into them at church, I can say good morning to them in their native language, just to encourage them. And it's fun because when you do go to countries that speak those languages and you can say good morning, you can see people's eyes light up. Like, you speak Turkish. It's like, no, really, all I can say is good morning and thank you. Or I have some Filipino friends, right? They're like, you speak Tagalog? And I'm like, no, I can say good morning. That's about all I can say.
How many languages are you up to now?
I don't know. A handful.
It's interesting in that I appreciate what you said a little bit ago, Hope, when you said, people are alike. I mean, we're all people, and people who have children, they're raising their children. They're trying to raise their children well, whether you're living in London or living in, Italy or Uganda. And so we have so much in common, essentially. And so they're wonderful bridges to be able to talk, to be able to share. And in essence, we're all going after the same thing in terms of we're raising kids, we're trying to make a living, put food on our table, et cetera, and so on. But the thing about Christians, we look at things from a broader perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
We often wondered when we were living in North Africa if people could see the difference between, even though our hospitality was different, we weren't having them over to have any kind of point system or to gain any kind of favor. We were having them over because we wanted to love them, right? We often wondered if people would see the difference there.
It reminds me of the stories when the crowds were following Jesus and he saw them and he was moved with compassion for them. And like they were like sheep without a shepherd. And I think, of course, we want to have that stirred in our heart. But I think, there's times where you see people of obvious different religious beliefs just based on the way they're dressed or what they're doing. And I think it's that compassion for those people that stirs us on and really grows our love for them, because as followers of Jesus, ultimately we want everybody to be followers of Jesus. And if you have a gift to give and you never give it, then I think that's a shame to not participate in the giving of that gift. So
such a beautiful way of putting it. I remember being in California and being a part of a very multicultural church. And one of our pastors would say this, none of us spoke other languages. Okay. So sometimes that could be threatening. And you don't always know all the cultural things about any other culture. But here's how he described it. It's a little raw, but it works. He says, you know what? He says, I don't like dogs, but when I walk up to a dog and its tail is wagging, I think something good can happen. If it's not, I step back. But he says, you can tell that with people too. Yeah. You can tell when people basically have their arms open to receive you and your hospitality. And so as people sometimes can be threatened to cross those lines, they don't know if they could share their faith or anything like that, look for tails wagging.
Yeah.
That's so good.
As you're talking about these commonalities, I was thinking there has to be probably some instances in which has caused you to have your faith stretched as you're meeting with these people. So I was wondering if has there been a way that you've been stretched? And along that, what keeps you grounded and going? Keep going.
Well, I think everybody can relate with this. Like going and doing street evangelism is not on most people's top 10 to-do list. So when we participate in that, like I said earlier, I haven't been able to go, but I have gone a couple of times, and it's not in our comfort zone to do it. But when you sit down and you talk to people and you realize they're atheist or they're another religion and they're willing to have a conversation with you, I think we are moved to that compassion piece. So that is a big stretching piece. And I think ultimately it comes from compassion, comes from a love for those people.
And also remember that somebody tapped you on the shoulder and took the time to tell you about Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're not driven like some other faiths to gain favor. We're actually driven out of thankfulness for what Jesus did for us. And when you really understand what he did for you on the cross, the substitution that he did for our sin, him who knew no sin, it really does drive you.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you guys have a tight schedule, and I could sit here probably for another half hour asking you questions. But one of the last questions I did want to ask you is, if someone was considering a similar path to what the two of you are doing, what advice would you give them?
I would refer back to our story. One of the best things I think we did was to serve others and then to find what areas of service energized us, right? And then see if there's a way that you can use that maybe on a broader scale or partner with somebody else to do that. So I would say the first thing is to get involved serving your local church.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. And I would say you have to have a love for people in order to be willing to go out and share with them. I mean, we can make it legalistically and say, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. But if you don't love the people, you're not going to really share with them. So in that sphere of serving is just understanding that, like, if I don't love people, I think there's a Bible verse about that.
I think there is.
You know, then I'm just a clanging gong, a clashing cymbal, right? So yeah, I would say serve in the local church, find out what excites you. I mean, the Bible talks about different gifts that we have. You know, some people it's hospitality, some people it's service, and it's not always the same thing. Some people are gifted evangelists, some people are gifted teachers. So find ways to get involved in your church so that you can better understand how you can serve the local body.
So the sharing of faith, does that only reside with you as a job, or?
No.
You can both say no at the same time. That's fine.
I was going to add one more thing to what Bobby said. I think that was good. Also, we didn't ask for it, but it's like we were given mentorship. And one thing I really like about First Church is your drive for discipleship right now. Disciple someone else, but also look to be discipled yourself. I mean, that's still something that we do. Even when we're discipling people, we're always looking for someone else to come alongside us as well. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
These are very good words. And, you know, sometimes we as humans can make things so much more difficult. What I see is two beautiful people here that have taken what God has given them and very naturally put them into practice. You know, not always concerned about all the little benchmarks that humans can make to it. You know, you don't have a seminary degree or whatever. No, you went off and did what God was calling you to do. You know, I always feel like if we're followers of Christ, if we're disciples, God camouflages some as plumbers.
Yes, amen.
Camouflages some as you know, electrical workers or workers over at a plant. And you know, I count it a great privilege to be a pastor. But the fact of the matter, I'm a disciple just like anyone.
Yep.
And so I don't step out of being a pastor and being a regular person no more than you step out. So yeah, just pursue what God has done. It's a lifestyle, and you have so much to give. And I thank you for the example that you're setting, and I thank you for, what you communicate to people even while you're back here in the States, because we need a lot more people that are following this sort of pathway.
Yeah, and I feel like that passage in Matthew 28, I think, you know, people, when it says, go and make disciples, teaching them, I think sometimes people think, oh, that's for the pastors. Yeah. That's for the people that are working at the church. That's for those people who go overseas because that's their job.
Right.
And I disagree with that. I mean, it is for those people, but it's really for all of us. You know, that phrase "go." If you dig into the Greek behind that, it's in your going, while you are doing, while you are living life in your day to day.
That's right.
And I think that's exactly right. Whether you're a plumber, a welder, a banker, a baker, whatever it is, I think that is what we're called to do. And again, I would just commend what you guys are doing with this kind of excitement about discipleship. Is of course we're called to go, and in our going, whether it's our neighbor across the street, whether it's our family member across the dinner table, whether it's someone in another county, or maybe if the Lord's leading you and gives you an opportunity to go overseas, great. Otherwise, there's a lot of discipleship that needs to happen. So it might be your coworkers, might be your friends, your neighbors.
Amen.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Great
reminder. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
for having
it's a
us.
pleasure to be
Thanks
here.
for stopping by. And Breanne, what do we got going on this weekend?
Well, I think there's church at 9:30.
There is. And you know what? We'll turn the calendar. It's going to be the month of May. It's going to be the first Sunday. So we come together, and we're going to have the Lord's Supper on Sunday.
We will have the Lord's Supper.
Praise the Lord for that wonderful sacrament that we could share in. Yeah. And we're still in our series on Proverbs. Yeah. Wise up. This week, we're going to talk about something that might be sensitive to some people, but make sure you come.
Aren't all proud?
Solomon had something to say about hard work and laziness.
Yes. Be a good one.
So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how not to be a sloth.
Okay.
And because for the kingdom, most of all, we don't need sloths. We need hard workers. So come and see what the book of Proverbs has to say about this. I think you'll be glad you did.
That's right. Well, friends, we'll see you at 9:30 on Sunday.
Yep. Thanks for listening. We love you. God bless you.